The email came through a maritime job board I'd been checking every morning for 3 months. Subject line: experienced marine technician needed, immediate deployment. I'd been out of work since my last contract ended with a commercial fishing fleet in the Bering Sea. The pay had been decent, but seasonal work doesn't cover rent in Seattle year-round. My savings account had exactly $847 left, and my landlord had already sent 2 courtesy reminders about next month's rent. I clicked the email open. Mr. Carter, your certification in deep-sea pressure systems has been brought to our attention. We require an experienced technician for a specialized research vessel currently conducting acoustic studies in the Mariana Trench region. Contract term, 45 days. Compensation, $47,000, paid in full upon completion. The work involves monitoring hull integrity systems during deep water operations. Experience with isolation and confined spaces essential. Deployment begins in 72 hours from Dutch Harbor, Alaska. Reply immediately if interested. Ms. Sarah Chen, NOAA Deep Ocean Research Division. I read it twice. $47,000 for 45 days was more than I'd make in 6 months of normal work. The Mariana Trench part gave me pause. That was serious depth, the kind of pressure that could turn a hull breach into a coffin in seconds. But I'd worked on deep-sea rigs before. I knew the risks. I replied within 10 minutes. By that afternoon, I had a contract in my inbox, a plane ticket to Anchorage, and a direct deposit of $10,000 labeled signing bonus. The money hit my account before I'd even printed the paperwork. My buddy Marcus called that night. He'd worked NOAA contracts before. $47K for 45 days? He said when I told him. What's the catch? Mariana Trench research, acoustic studies. There was a pause. Jake, be straight with me. Did they mention what kind of acoustic studies? Just monitoring hull systems. Why? Another pause. NOAA doesn't pay that much for standard research. That's private contractor money, military money. The email came from a NOAA address. Just keep your head down, man. Do the work, take the money, don't ask questions. I should have pressed him on that, but I didn't. 3 days later, I was standing on a dock in Dutch Harbor, staring at the Eurybia. She wasn't what I expected. Most research vessels look like floating laboratories, clean, modern, covered in sensors and equipment. The Eurybia looked like a submarine that someone had partially converted into a surface ship. Her hull was matte black, covered in acoustic tiles, and she sat unnaturally low in the water. A woman in a NOAA jacket was waiting at the gangway. Late 40s, gray hair pulled into a tight bun, the kind of face that didn't smile much. Jake Carter? She asked. That's me. Dr. Chen, welcome aboard. Drop your gear in cabin 7, then meet me in the control room. We depart in 2 hours. The interior confirmed my first impression. This wasn't a research vessel. The corridors were narrow, the walls reinforced steel instead of painted aluminum. Watertight doors every 20 feet, emergency pressure suits in wall-mounted lockers, everything bolted down and secured. Cabin 7 was barely larger than a closet. A bunk, a desk, a small locker. A laminated emergency procedures chart was zip-tied to the bunk frame. I noticed the chart included instructions for catastrophic pressure events and rapid ballast flooding. Standard for deep-sea work, but seeing it in writing made my stomach tighten. The control room was more impressive. 3 walls of monitors showing sonar feeds, pressure sensors, and navigation displays. Dr. Chen stood at a central console with 2 other crew members, a young guy in his 20s with nervous eyes, and an older man with a salt and pepper beard who looked like he'd been at sea since before I was born. This is Hayes, She nodded to the young guy. Communications and surface systems. And that's Bridger. He's been with the project since the beginning. Bridger looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not hostile, but not welcoming either. Evaluating. "You worked deep water before?" he asked. "Bering Sea rigs, nothing below 2,000 feet. We'll be going deeper than that." He turned back to his console. "A lot deeper." Dr. Chen pulled up a map on the main screen. The Mariana Trench, a curved scar in the ocean floor east of the Philippines. She zoomed in on a section marked with a red boundary box. "We'll be conducting acoustic mapping here," she said, pointing to a spot labeled Challenger Deep, Western Basin. "Depth approximately 35,000 feet. We'll maintain position 200 feet off the seafloor for periods of 6 to 12 hours while we collect data." I felt my chest tighten. 35,000 feet? That was almost 7 miles down, where the pressure could crush a car into a cube the size of a basketball. "What exactly are we mapping?" I asked. "Geological formations," Dr. Chen said quickly. "Volcanic vents, sediment patterns, standard survey work." That was a lie. I could tell from how fast she said it, how she didn't quite meet my eyes. But I'd taken the money, I'd signed the contract, and Marcus's words echoed in my head. "Do the work, don't ask questions." We left port at 1800 hours. The first 3 days were uneventful. We sailed south, then west, crossing into international waters. The crew was small, just the 4 of us, plus 2 rotating engineers who stayed below deck most of the time, maintaining the engines and ballast systems. Everyone kept to themselves. Meals were quiet. No one talked about the mission. On the 4th night, Hayes knocked on my cabin door.
"You're on hull watch," he said. "Midnight to 0600. Bridger will show you the monitoring station." The monitoring station was a small room adjacent to the control center, lit by the dim glow of 24 screens. Each one showed a different section of the hull: pressure readings, acoustic signatures, structural integrity sensors. Bridger walked me through the basics. Green means normal, yellow means watch it, red means we surface immediately. He pointed to a large central screen showing a cross-section of the hull. "This is the real-time pressure map. When we're at depth, you'll see the outer hull compress slightly. That's normal. What you're watching for is abnormal compression, concentrated pressure points that could indicate a weak spot or external force." "External force?" I asked. "Like what?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Equipment failure, debris impact, anything unusual. Has that happened before? Just watch the screens, Carter." He left me alone. The first hour was boring. I watched the numbers fluctuate slightly as the ship rocked in the gentle swells. I drank bad coffee from a thermos. I checked my phone, but there was no signal this far out. Around 2 o'clock, I heard it for the first time. A low, resonant sound. Not quite a hum, not quite a vibration. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, conducted through the hull itself. I pressed my hand against the steel wall and felt it, a deep, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat. I checked the acoustic sensors. Nothing unusual registered. No impacts, no structural anomalies. But the sound continued, rising and falling in a pattern that felt almost deliberate. I keyed the intercom. "Control, this is Hull Watch. Are we running any equipment that would cause low-frequency vibrations?" Hayes' voice crackled back. "Negative. Why?" "I'm hearing something through the hull." A pause. Then Dr. Chen's voice. "Describe it." "Low frequency, rhythmic. It's not showing up on the sensors." Another pause, longer this time. Likely ambient ocean noise. Whale songs can travel hundreds of miles underwater. Log it and continue monitoring. But it didn't sound like whales. I'd heard whale songs before. During my Bering Sea work, humpbacks would sometimes pass beneath the rig, their calls echoing through the support columns like mournful ghosts. This was different, more structured, almost like... I shook my head. I was tired. 4 hours into a 6-hour watch with nothing but coffee and darkness. The mind plays tricks. The sound faded around 2:30 and didn't return. When Bridger relieved me at 600, I mentioned it. He just nodded. You'll hear lots of things down here. Ocean's full of noise. We reached the dive site on day 7. I was in the control room when Dr. Chen gave the order to descend. The ship's ballast tanks flooded with seawater, and slowly we began to sink. The main view screen showed our depth in real time: 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet. The hull groaned as the pressure increased. Normal, expected, but still unsettling. At 5,000 feet, the sunlight was completely gone. The external cameras showed nothing but black water, occasionally illuminated by bioluminescent organisms that drifted past like underwater stars. 10,000 feet, 15,000 feet. The groaning got louder. I watched the pressure sensors climb into numbers that made my palms sweat. The hull was designed for this, I reminded myself. Tested to 40,000 feet. We were fine. 20,000 feet. Dr. Chen activated the external floodlights. They cut through the darkness, maybe 30 feet before the black swallowed them. Something large moved at the edge of the light, a flash of pale flesh and too many legs, then vanished. Giant isopod, Bridger muttered. Nothing to worry about. 25,000 feet. That's when I saw it on one of the secondary monitors, a readout I hadn't noticed before, labeled Acoustic Signature Analysis. It showed a waveform pattern, constantly shifting and adjusting. As we descended, the pattern changed, became more complex, more layered. "What's that monitoring?" I asked, pointing. Dr. Chen glanced at it, then back to her main console. Ambient noise filtering helps us isolate geological sounds from biological. But the waveform didn't look random. It looked organized, like language. 30,000 feet. The hull groaning had become a constant symphony now, high-pitched creaks mixing with deep metallic moans. I could feel it in my teeth, in my chest. We were in an environment that wanted to crush us, held back only by steel and engineering. 35,000 feet. Approaching position, Dr. Chen announced. Leveling off in 3, 2, 1. The descent stopped. We hung suspended in absolute darkness, 7 miles beneath the surface, 200 feet above the deepest seafloor on Earth. Beginning acoustic survey, Dr. Chen said. That's when the whispers started. At first, I thought it was interference, a hiss of static in my headset, but it was coming through the hull again, that same resonant quality I'd heard on my first watch, except now, at depth, it was louder, clearer, and it was forming words. Not English, not any language I recognized, but the rhythm, the cadence, it was definitely linguistic. Syllables rising and falling in complex patterns, multiple voices overlapping, speaking in unison, their words conducted through thousands of tons of water and steel to reach us. I looked at the others. Hayes had his hands pressed against his headset, his face pale. Bridger stood perfectly still, jaw clenched, staring at nothing.
Dr. Chen worked at her console, fingers flying across the keyboard, but I noticed her hands were shaking. Are you all hearing this? I asked. Focus on your station, Carter, Dr. Chen said sharply. What is this? What are we actually doing down here? She spun to face me. We're collecting data. That's all you need to know. Now monitor your... An alarm shrieked. Every screen in the control room flashed red. Pressure spike, section 12, Hayes shouted. Hull integrity at 70% and dropping. I pulled up the hull display. Section 12 was directly beneath us, the keel plates. The pressure reading showed an impossible spike, 35,000 psi concentrated on a 10-square-foot area, like something was pushing on us from below. Surface, now! I yelled. Wait, Dr. Chen said. What? We need another 30 seconds of data. The hull's going to breach. The whispers were getting louder. I could make out individual words now, even though I didn't understand them. They were coming faster, more urgent, like someone trying to warn us, or summon us, or... Crack! The sound of metal failure, high-pitched, terrifying. Emergency surface! Dr. Chen finally screamed. Bridger slammed the ballast release. Compressed air flooded the tanks, forcing water out, giving us buoyancy. The ship lurched upward. The whispers turned to screams. Through the external cameras, I saw something in the water below us. Not an animal, not a rock formation. A shape, massive and angular, with surfaces that reflected our lights in ways that didn't make sense geometrically. And around it, moving through the water with impossible grace, were other shapes, smaller, human-sized, but not human. Jesus Christ, Hayes whispered. What are those? Dr. Chen shut off the external cameras. Everyone listen to me very carefully. What you just saw is classified. You will not speak about it to anyone. You will not write about it. You will not... You knew, I said. You knew something was down there. She didn't deny it. We rose through the darkness in silence, except for the whispers. They followed us up through the water column, fading gradually as we climbed. But even at 10,000 feet, I could still hear them, even at 5,000 feet. When we finally broke the surface 6 hours later, I went straight to my cabin and locked the door. I tried to process what I'd seen, the shapes in the water, the impossible structure, the whispers that seemed to come from the hull itself, from the ocean, from everywhere. That night, on watch again, I pulled up the acoustic analysis data that Dr. Chen had been collecting. She'd locked most of it, but some files were still accessible. I found the waveform recordings from our descent. I ran them through a spectral analysis program, something I'd learned to use during my rig days for detecting structural vibrations. The program identified patterns, repeated sequences. The whispers weren't random. They were a language. Complex, multi-layered, with grammatical structures the program partially recognized. And buried in the data was something else, a translation attempt, probably run by Dr. Chen's own analysis software. The fragments that had been decoded made my blood run cold. The iron ones return, speak the depth tongue. The pressure breaks all eventually. You have heard the calling. I stared at that last one, the calling. That's when I noticed something wrong with my reflection in the dark monitor screen. My eyes looked different, slightly more spread apart than they should be, or maybe it was the lighting. I turned on the cabin light to check. My eyes were fine, but there was something else, a faint discoloration on my neck, just below my jaw, blue-gray like old bruising. I grabbed my phone to take a picture, to document it, but when I looked at the screen, my camera showed nothing. My neck looked completely normal. I looked in the mirror again. The discoloration was spreading, moving down toward my collarbone. No, no, no. We're scheduled to make another dive tomorrow. Dr. Chen says we need to complete the survey. But I've seen Bridger's medical logs. I shouldn't have access to them, but Hayes is getting sloppy with the shared drives, probably because he's barely sleeping either.
Bridger has been on the ship for 7 months. This is his 11th dive to the structure. His last medical scan shows the same discoloration I'm seeing on myself, but far more advanced, covering 60% of his body. And there are other changes documented. Bone density increasing, lung capacity expanding. His pupils have developed a secondary membrane. The doctor's notes say, subject continues adaptation to hyperbaric environment. Linguistic comprehension improving. Now understands approximately 40% of the deep speech without translation equipment. Dr. Chen isn't studying what's down there. She's studying what it does to us. I tried to call Marcus from the satellite phone in the communications room tonight. I needed to tell someone, to warn someone. The call wouldn't connect. Hayes said it's solar interference, but I saw him exchange a look with Dr. Chen when I asked. The whispers are constant now. I can hear them even when we're on the surface, even when I cover my ears. They're not coming from outside anymore. They're coming from inside my head. And the horrible thing, I'm starting to understand them. They're not threatening. They're not evil. They're just speaking, telling stories, sharing knowledge, showing me things humans were never meant to know, things about the deep places of the world where pressure and darkness have existed since before anything crawled onto land. The discoloration is spreading faster now. Yesterday, it was just my neck. This morning, it's reached my chest and started down my arms. My fingers are beginning to web. Dr. Chen says this is temporary, that when we return to port in 28 days, there's a treatment protocol that will reverse the changes. But I've seen Bridger. 7 months, she said. He's had 7 months of treatment protocol. He doesn't look human anymore. Not completely. Oh, he's close enough that you wouldn't notice in passing, in dim light, but I see it now. The way he moves, fluid and strange. The way his head tilts when he listens to the hull. The way his eyes reflect light they shouldn't be able to see. He came to my cabin tonight, knocked softly. When I opened the door, he looked at me with something like sympathy. "It doesn't hurt," he said quietly. "After a while, it doesn't hurt at all." What's happening to us? Adaptation, evolution. The ocean calls back what belongs to it. He glanced down the corridor, making sure we were alone. We came from the water, Carter, millions of years ago. Maybe part of us never really left. That's not how this works. You can't just change someone. The pressure breaks all eventually, he said, and I recognized the phrase from the translated whispers. You can resist, fight it, try to stay human. He held up his hands, and in the dim light, I saw the webbing between his fingers was complete now, translucent and perfect. Or you can let go. He left me standing there. I'm writing this on the 12th day. We dive again tomorrow, back to the structure. Dr. Chen says 45,000 feet this time, past the Challenger Deep, to the place where the structure opens. She keeps calling it a structure, but the whispers have shown me what it really is. It's a door, and we're being invited through. I'm not sure I want to resist anymore. The surface feels wrong now, too bright, too dry, too loud with meaningless noise. But down there, in the dark, in the pressure, in the deep, the whispers promise it's home. I think they might be right.